So James Cleverly recently was on a big tour over to Japan in preparation for the G7, which, of course, he as foreign secretary, it's good to see that he's at least, maybe actually doing his job compared to, as we saw, certainly with Liz Truss, and even when you compare it to Boris Johnson, casually just strolling around the world, dropping colonial poetry wherever he felt like it. And it was kind of embarrassing. And one of the things we've got to get across is, especially when it comes to politics, you've often got domestic policy and you've got foreign policy, sort of how your country interacts with the world. And yet, with the Brexiteers, there was always this idea and suggestion that we were actually this country that can punch well above its weight. And to a certain extent, oh, pardon me, that was true. Britain had a lot of what we called soft power. And soft power is very much you can influence your friends and allies in a sort of very sort of soft way. You can help them out with certain situations. You can look at sort of collaborating in different projects. This was something Britain on the world stage was known to be very, very good at. And with Brexit happening, we always said, look, with Brexit, when it happens, you're basically turning your back on Europe. You're not going to any longer collaborate with the EU. And we have seen that there's all these potential opportunities, and yet the government not even taking care of them. It's kind of shocking that this is the attitude that we have, and instead cleverly trying to insist, as many Brexiteers are, that somehow our future is in the Indo-Pacific, where I'd like to reiterate, we are not in the Indo-Pacific. We are in the Atlantic, off the coast of Europe. Where do you think our foreign policy priorities are? It's not that hard, but again, this is part of the big Brexit delusion. And some of the things in this interview I sort of really want to respond to, and we're going to go over that because I think this really just shows that still Brexiteers like Cleverly are still very much in this delusion about Brexit Britain. So today we're going to be talking about Brexit Britain and its foreign policy. So before we do that, though, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button as well down below, and of course, the Pony Club as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. Even if you do, just click on the like and share button. Like I say, that helps out massively. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment down below on what you think to, well, James Cleverly his, not so cleverly ideas. But, so, three things that get brought up in this interview. First of all, this idea that even though we've left Europe, that we're still going to collaborate with them. The other idea was this much vaunted trade deal with America, not surprisingly. And then, of course, the final one I want to sort of address, the idea that Brexit Britain isn't being laughed at internationally still as a bit of a laughingstock. So let's go over the first one first. Cleverly claims that even though we have left Europe, we are still going to be working with our sort of friends and allies in Europe. But what's Cleverly actually doing to support that? We have multiple businesses out there who we have covered time and time again are crying out to get rid of these trade barriers which Brexit has put up, get rid of all this new red tape. Because the Brexiteers, like Cleverly, were claiming that, oh, if we leave, then nothing changes. No, everything changed when we left the European Union, and yet they cannot seem to understand that. We have seen businesses lose, on average, about 30% of their businesses because they cannot export. We've seen businesses shut down because they cannot absorb these new costs. We've seen some businesses just give up on exporting or importing altogether. And this has a dramatic effect on our economy. And as we've seen, our economy is getting smaller. It is contracting. And it is because of Brexit. It doesn't matter that you go and sign things like, the Pacific Partnership or the deals with Canada and Mexico. That doesn't work because those trade deals are with countries that are thousands of miles away, and you cannot you cannot replicate things like just-in-time delivery systems with Canada or Mexico or Australia or New Zealand. You can only do that if you get rid of the trade barriers and agree to matching standards with the EU, so that then those goods can flow across the border easily. So then they don't have a mound of paperwork. They just have one signature and that's it. The next part, of course, he goes on to say that essentially, look, we wanted this trade deal with America, but it's fine. We'll get one eventually. Eventually, guys, don't worry. We'll get one eventually. And he sort of downplays the idea that doing the Northern Ireland sort of the protocol, the new Windsor framework, as it's now called, wasn't done in sort of an act of desperation in trying to sort of get the US round the table. But the US, as we have said multiple times, has been since day one, hey, UK, if you are seen in any way shafting Ireland, no trade deal. And they forget that the Irish lobby in America is incredibly powerful and incredibly influential. We've just seen Biden when he was in Ireland. Tell me, who got more out of that visit? Who now has more of a special relationship? Is it the UK with the US, or is it Ireland with the US? Because I see that's where the special relationship now going. Now that we've left the EU and the single market, well, we're seeing a lot of American businesses now start to invest in Ireland because now that's the gateway to Europe. And we are seeing Ireland's economy start to massively benefit from that. So absolutely, completely disagree that this whole idea of rushing to try and do the Windsor Framework, which, bear in mind, hasn't solved the core problem of what Rishi Sunak tried to do, which was try to get the DUP back into Stormont, still hasn't solved that problem. Even though we've potentially got general elections coming up again for the Northern Ireland Assembly, it is very unlikely, if the results are going to be pretty much the same, which, to be honest, by all looking at the polls, does look like it is going to be the case, the DUP will not return to power sharing. There has to be a fundamental change in Stormont, basically taking away the ability for the DUP to, well, stop forming a government. But that is going to take engagement with Ireland and America at the same time. That is something we cannot unilaterally decide. But it is something I think the people in Northern Ireland should be very well aware of, that the reason why you don't have a functioning government and so much stuff at the moment in Ireland is just ticking over is because you don't have a functioning government in Stormont. And the DUP are responsible for that. And I think they should be electorally punished. But unfortunately, because of how Stormont is set up, they will always have the option to basically act like the children that they are acting and throwing their, toys out of the pram at the earliest opportunity. We saw very recently a head figure in the DUP basically said, yeah, we thought with Brexit we'd get a hard border back between the north of Ireland and the Republic. That was never going to happen. That was delusional thinking. And then, of course, the final one. Is Brexit Britain still seen as somewhat of a basket case? Are we still being sort of laughed at on an international level? To some point, certainly after, well, the absolute trial and tribulations we had in 2022, the laughter has somewhat died down, that's for sure. Rishi Sunak has at least managed to ensure that, well, the adults, maybe, shall we say, are back in charge. Although for how long, we don't know. Like I say, I always suspect there is sort of someone who would be willing to sort of, take up and maybe replace Sunak. And of course, after what I highly suspect will be a disaster of a local elections, well, all those red wall MPs are going to start running around like headless chickens, and a mass panic within the party is going to ensue about the next general elections. And if there's one thing you should know about the Conservative parties, they do not make good decisions when they are panicking. Like I say, you want an example, take the entirety of 2022 as an example. But are we still being laughed at for Brexit? Well, yes. No other country in the world can really understand why we did Brexit. It doesn't make sense to them. And we've covered multiple stories. Heck, even in The Guardian today, there is an opinion piece by someone who has French parents-in-laws, and they've come over and she got to realize what sort of like Britain's view through the French eyes, and they can't understand what's going on in the UK. Neither can probably anyone else in Europe. I've said before, when I was in Monaco with sort of the other European JCI counterparts, they can't understand half the stuff that's going on in the UK. They're kind of shocked by it, to be honest. And I'm not going to be surprised if the topic of conversation comes up when I'm in Bucharest as well with them. And then it's not just Europe as well. We've seen pieces in America that have said, yeah, even we can't understand why you're doing Brexit. It doesn't make sense. And then, of course, Japan, the country where James Cleverly is in, where we covered a piece in Japan Times, 2 years ago, where even they were saying, yeah, we still can't understand why on earth you did Brexit. You're trying to join the Pacific Partnership. Well, okay, but you're not going to get any benefit from it, and don't expect us to change the rules of the Pacific Partnership so that you can benefit from it. Because why would these sort of 12 other countries that are in the Pacific Partnership change the rules for one member who is not in the Pacific? So overall, to be honest, I don't think Cleverly really gave a good interview. He tried, but these are the typical stock answers that we've come to expect, really, from, well, Brexiteers when it comes to sort of these important discussions. And the thing is, foreign policy is really important. But as always, I say thank you very much for joining us. And think at this moment in time, because I am pre-recording this video, I will probably maybe still live streaming at this moment in time, because like I say, it is the sort of the big EU discussion debate in Parliament. It's got a 3-hour schedule, so we'll see if we end up going for those 3 hours. It kicks off at 4:30, so I don't know if I'll still be live streaming at this time when this video goes out. But like I say, thank you very much for all those people for watching. Like I say, and as always, thank you very much for all the support you guys show. And as always, we'll see you all next time.